Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's greatest country in the world. Thanks for being here. The Supreme Court on the move. Supreme Court in action. That's what I like to see. So in this segment, I want to talk about two Supreme Court decisions, both made possible because of one Donald Trump. But he can't be president anymore because his tweets were so mean. I just can't take his tweets anymore. Quick sidebar before we get to the two decisions. One of the most consequential decisions in this country was the Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's decision to not retire on the last year of Obama's presidency. She was 82 in Obama's final year. She could have retired then, and then Obama would have chosen a replacement. But she hung in there and passed away under Trump's presidency and was replaced with Amy Coney Barrett, a pro-life conservative Catholic. And here we are. Now, I'm sure that Ruth Bader Ginsburg thought that Hillary was going to win, but still, she could have retired at 82. All right, so the biggest story here that we're going to talk about is the Supreme Court deciding to accept a massive country-altering case on abortion. They haven't ruled on it yet. They haven't heard the case yet. They just decided to accept it, which in and of itself is a big deal because you need a certain number of judges to even decide to accept the case. So they're probably going to rule on the pro-life side, right? But before we give the details on that, because that decision is not going to come until sometime around the end of the year, the other decision I want to talk about here, they did make a decision, a 9-0 unanimous decision on a Second Amendment case. That's important because it shows how extreme the Biden administration is. So let's start with that one here. So this case is called Caniglia versus Strom. So Edward Caniglia and his wife, they got in a heated argument, a marital spat. And Edward gave her a gun and told her to shoot me now. All right, so the guy gave the wife a gun, said, shoot me now. She left. She went to go stay in a hotel. She called police to go back to their house the next morning, right? She was worried that he committed suicide and she wanted someone to escort her to the house. So the officer went and he was there, and the officer said that, Edward, you need to go to a hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. He agreed to that and he just went off and went to the hospital. As he was in the hospital, police took 2 guns from his house. They just confiscated 2 guns. He came back home from the hospital and he wanted his guns back. This was in Rhode Island. And the government of Rhode Island, or the police force, said, no, you can't have them back. So he sued, saying that his firearms were seized without his consent, violating not only his Second Amendment rights, but also his Fourth Amendment rights. The Fourth Amendment protects you against unreasonable searches, and in this case, seizures. So the question is, what is reasonable or unreasonable for the government to take your guns from you? What's a reasonable seizure, or was this an unreasonable seizure? That was the question before the court. The argument from the Biden administration, from the left, is that police are allowed to search your car. And this is, we don't call this a seizure. We call this community caretaking. That's all. It's just some community caretaking. And if we can do that in your car, then we can also apply that to your home. So are you with me? So the Biden administration, in an effort to take away your guns and have complete control over the ownership of your firearms, they argued in front of the Supreme Court that it is reasonable that with no warrant and no probable cause to take your guns from your home and not give them back. They argued that that was reasonable. Now, maybe you agree with that. Maybe you think that is reasonable. I'm here to tell you that the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that it's not. The Supreme Court was unanimous that no, the government cannot seize things from your home without a warrant, even guns. This is Clarence Thomas in the decision. The very core of the Fourth Amendment's guarantee is the right of a person to retreat into his or her home and there be free from unreasonable government intrusion. The other justices go on and say that the government, like just because you created this thing called community caretaking, that doesn't give you the right to violate the Fourth Amendment rights of citizens. This is a wonderful victory for liberty. And 9-0. Very impressive, worthy of celebration. I feel like we don't celebrate enough things on this show that are happening in our country. This is a wonderful thing worthy of a celebration. Concerning that the Biden administration and the Democrats on this issue are so out of touch with the Constitution that they would argue for this, as they were rebuked by the Supreme Court 9-0, that they would still even try to make these arguments, but alas. I mean, think about this. Even like Justice Sotomayor was like, no, guys, no. You're very wrong on this issue. Cool? You with me on that one? All right. Wonderful, wonderful news for the Second Amendment, but mostly the Fourth. But they overlap, obviously. Okay, cool. That's the first one. Second one. This was, again, hasn't been argued yet. Probably be October, something like that. But they decided to take it, and that's a big deal. It's about abortion. So tomorrow, we're going to do a proper segment on pro-life and pro-life arguments. But for now, over the next 5 minutes, I just want to go over the legal landscape of what is happening here. So this is the first massive challenge to Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade from 1973. It's called, what's it called? It's called Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health, or Jackson Women's Healthcare, or something like that. Dobbs versus Jackson Women's something. Here's the short of it. According to Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court decided that the Constitution allows, this is a tricky sentence because there's a lot of like double negatives. The Supreme Court said that the Constitution allows abortion laws up until the point of a baby's viability outside the womb. All right, so the Supreme Court has ruled that a state can pass a law banning abortion only after viability outside of the womb. All right, so the Supreme Court says again, from Roe v. Wade, you can't ban abortion, can't ban abortion, can't ban it, can't ban it, can't ban it, can't ban it. Oh, once the baby's viable, then you can ban abortion. Only after viability outside the womb. Does that make sense? There's some double negatives there, but I hope that makes sense. So a state can only ban abortion after the baby's viable outside the womb. Anytime before that, no state can ban abortion. Now, the problem is that standard of viability makes no sense because viability is a completely moving target. It's a subjective moving target. It changes over time. It's not based on the reality of a baby and of human development. It's based on our medical abilities of that time. So in 1973, when Roe v. Wade was decided, a baby born only 8 weeks premature, so a baby born at 32 weeks would die. That was too premature. It was not viable at 32 weeks. We didn't have the medical equipment, we didn't have the tools or ability or know-how to keep a baby alive that was born at 32 weeks. 32 weeks was fatally premature. 32 weeks was not viable. And therefore, the Supreme Court said that a state can allow abortion up to 32 weeks. But today, because of medical advancement over the last 40 years, a baby born at 21 weeks. All right, guys, so there's 21 weeks. That's a baby in the womb at 21 weeks. We now have an arsenal of equipment and tools and skills and medicine that can keep a baby alive at only 21 weeks in the womb. So that Roe v. Wade standard of viability, it's a moving target, much to the left's demise. Now, with this case, the Supreme Court could make a completely new standard of when states can make abortion laws and when they can't. Here's the deal. 2018, Mississippi passed a law banning abortion after 15 weeks. Here, by the way, is a baby of 15 weeks. The state's argument, state Mississippi, their argument is that a baby develops the ability to feel pain at 10 to 12 weeks. And the state of Mississippi says this is undisputed in the medical literature, and we'll talk more about it tomorrow, that a fetus, a baby, develops the ability to feel pain at 10 to 12 weeks. Therefore, at a ban on abortion after 15 weeks, the line they use is it appropriately regulates inhumane procedures. right? So they said we ban abortion at 15 weeks because this bill appropriately regulates inhumane procedures. Inhumane to kill this baby at 15 weeks after it's already had a couple weeks of the ability to feel pain. They also say that a woman's risk of death from an abortion at 16 weeks is 35 times more likely than at only 8 weeks. So it's for a woman's safety as well. Right? So the legal significance of this case, if the Supreme Court rules accordingly, which because of Donald Trump and Amy Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh, they probably will, this case would eliminate the country and the Supreme Court's standard of when abortion can be outlawed. It would eliminate this idea of viability. It would be gone. Viability would no longer be the standard, which it shouldn't be anymore. Because again, viability used to be 32 weeks, now it's 21 weeks. So what even is that? It's a meaningless metric that changes over time. So that's not a good standard anymore. So what should the standard be? Well, we'll see what the Supreme Court says, but they would definitely, certainly if they uphold this Mississippi law, would allow abortion bans at a much earlier period in the pregnancy. Again, Mississippi's 15 weeks. And maybe, who knows, in other states, maybe even sooner, possibly even conception. So we're going to talk more about abortion. Tomorrow we'll do a more complete segment, a more robust pro-life argument. It's always good to just be refreshed on all this. I just wanted to present the legal arguments and the legal implications of this case. Is a very, very big deal. This is why you voted for Donald Trump. Maybe there's a lot of reasons you voted for Donald Trump. This is why a lot of people held their breath and voted for Donald Trump in 2016. They're like, I don't really know. Not sure. He's kind of a wild card. He could be like a New York Democrat. I don't really know, but I got to do it because of the Supreme Court. Boom. You got your Supreme Court justices and you got your pro-life case. This is the one. This could change everything. I'll leave you this one fact just to whet your palate for tomorrow. 2018, Stephen Jacobs from the University of Chicago, he did a survey of 5,500 biologists from over 1,000 universities. And he asked them 3 different variances of the same question. But the point of it is, when does human life begin? Now, in this group of 5,500 biologists, only 15 of them were pro-life. 15%. Only 15% of them were pro-life. So this was not a pro-life activist group that he asked. I want to make that point very clear. He didn't go to a pro-life conference for this survey. This is a 5,500 biologists at over 1,000 universities. 85% of them were pro-choice. Only 15% were pro-life. Still, 95% of these biologists agreed with the statement that a human's life begins at fertilization. A human's life begins at conception. 95% of biologists. We'll go into more detail tomorrow, but I'll say this. If you're pro-abortion, pro-choice, pro-abortion, why are you so anti-science? Why are you a science denier? In other news, why do you deny the reality that something will happen in your neighborhood that you need to be prepared for? It definitely will happen. It has happened. It will happen again. A natural disaster, hyperinflation certainly is coming. And when that happens, people will freak out. Who knows what the next race riot's going to be, a stock market crash. I mean, these things are going to happen. It's just a matter of when. How about this? For a little wild card, how about when the day will come when Russian hackers will hijack an oil pipeline and everyone panics because there's no gasoline in the southeastern portion of the United States, for instance, right? So you never know exactly what, and you certainly don't know when. But it's just a matter of time when everyone else around you is going to be in an absolute panic mode, absolute free fall. But you'll be calm, cool, and collected because you know you're totally prepared. My Patriot Supply. I have a My Patriot Supply right there. It's just, if you could turn the camera around, it's sitting right there. Go to preparewiththefirst.com. We got some special deals just for you from My Patriot Supply. It's about being self-reliant. All right, that's all. I mean, personal responsibility. That's like the hallmark of conservatism. Is personal responsibility and self-reliance. You just buy this, check it off your list, and you're good to go. The man down the street, a guy down the street, he has not prepared. He's not protecting his family. I have. I am. You can. And everything with My Patriot Supply stays fresh for 25 years. So you do it once. You don't have to do it every year. You just do it once and you're good to go. On this special website, you could save $50 on their 4-week emergency food kit. Depends on how many people in your family. You're going to need that. You're going to need the full 4 weeks. So you save $50 on that. Preparewiththefirst.com. Been doing this for almost 12 years. Millions of families, including mine. Preparewiththefirst.com. Texas, 0 deaths from COVID yesterday in all of Texas. First time since the beginning of COVID. No deaths. It's over. Congratulations, everyone. Congratulations. COVID is over. The Texas mask mandate was, the end of it was 2.5 months ago. I had to triple check that. That didn't seem right. That was March 2nd. March 2nd, when Governor Abbott ended the mask mandate in Texas, and President Biden came out and said that's Neanderthal thinking. Remember? That was 2.5 months ago. And it was, it's going to be, their cases are going to skyrocket, blah, blah, blah. And of course they didn't. They continued to drop, and now we're at 0 deaths in a state of 29 million people. Just to refresh your memory on how much people are flipping out, this girl's a nice example of it.
Governor Abbott has just lifted the mandatory mask mandate in the entire state of Texas. Now businesses are back at 100% capacity. So when there's a giant spike in our country, you're going to know exactly who to blame. You can say don't mess with Texas all you want. You know who can mess with Texas? The wrath of God. Viruses don't care about your weird state pride. Get over it.
Wonder if she's available for comment today. This is another clip here that just doesn't seem real. This is Fauci.
I'm obviously careful because, I'm a physician and a healthcare provider. I am now much more comfortable in people seeing me indoors without a mask. Before the CDC made the recommendation change, I didn't want to look like I was giving mixed signals. But being a fully vaccinated person, the chances of my getting infected in an indoor setting is extremely low. And that's the reason why in indoor settings now, I feel comfortable about not wearing a mask because I'm fully vaccinated.
Amazing. I didn't want to look like I was giving mixed signals. That's fantastic. Wait a second, though. I want to play another clip here. This was Fauci 2 months ago. Rand Paul telling him, listen, there's no scientific evidence that, this is 2 months ago, no scientific evidence that vaccinated people spread the virus or that vaccinated people will continue to get sick. Why are you still wearing your mask? This is 2 months ago.
You're telling everybody to wear a mask, whether they've had an infection or a vaccine. What I'm saying is they have immunity, and everybody agrees they have immunity. What studies do you have that people that have had the vaccine or have had the infection are spreading the infection? If we're not spreading the infection, isn't it just theater?
No, it's
not.
not.
The vaccine and you're wearing 2 masks. Isn't that theater?
No, that's not. Here we go again with the theater.
That's great. So 2 months ago, oh, here you go again. It's definitely not theater that I was wearing 2 masks, that I'm wearing 2 masks and vaccinated 2 months ago. And today, Fauci admitting that he wore a mask because he didn't want to give mixed signals, even though Rand Paul was exactly right. It was, in fact, theater. And these same people like Fauci and everyone at the CDC, they wonder why we don't trust government officials. Why would we? Add that to the list. Yesterday, we did a segment, and we talked about there's 2 main groups of people who are still wearing masks. You have cult members and the mentally ill. By the way, in California, Governor Newsom came out and said that we still are keeping our mask mandate in California until June 15th. For no reason whatsoever. They just don't want to give up control. So we have cult members and the mentally ill. I got a third group of people that I want to share that are still wearing masks. It's the prideful. pride, let's talk about pride. Pride's the worst sin of them all. It's the worst, it's the most prevalent. We can go into the theology of ranking sins, but I got two quotes I want to share here. The first is from C.S. Lewis. He said, unchastity, anger, greed, drunkenness, and all of that are mere flea bites in comparison with pride. It was through pride that the devil became the devil. Pride leads to every other vice. It is the complete anti-God state of mind. And then the great Jonathan Edwards, who was the founder of the American Great Awakening, 1700s, he said, remember that pride is the worst viper that's in the human heart, the greatest disturber of the soul's peace and sweet communion with Christ. It was the first sin that ever was, and lies lowest in the foundation of Satan's whole building, and is the most difficultly rooted out. It's the most hidden, secret, and deceitful of all lusts, and it often creeps in insensibly into the midst of religion, and sometimes under the guise of humility. Jonathan Edwards there. The opposite of pride is humility. But as Jonathan Edwards says, it can be hard to tell the difference, right? We are really good at deceiving ourselves. And even ourselves walking around thinking that our pride is in fact humility. Anyway, I bring this up because part of pride is not admitting when you're wrong. Part of pride, being prideful, is not admitting when you're wrong. Now, I've never been wrong about anything. I just want to be clear. Especially in my marriage. I am always right. Me, personally. Me and Jesse Kelly, the two of us, are right about everything. Marriage, parenting, stock tips, everything. We're always right all the time. I happen to be perfect like that. But you, and I don't want to be rude, but you are wrong all the time. And you make mistakes all the time. It's really important that you admit that you're wrong. I personally have never had to use this advice. Because again, I'm perfect, never wrong. But some mentors of ours said that when you screw up as a parent, again, not applicable to me, but when you screw up as a parent, make sure you apologize to your kids for it. Apologize to them. The act of apologizing and modeling what a proper apology looks like and true humility looks like to your kids can even make up for whatever the bad thing is that you did that you're apologizing for. All right, so let's say you yell at your kids, you lose your temper. Again, I can't relate to this, but I've heard of this happening before, where you lose your temper to your kids. Let's say that's a -1 point. But if then you later apologize to your kids for losing your temper, that could be 2 positive points in the long run. So it can almost, if you do it properly, can end up for the best, or at least can be redeemed, right? We have another set of mentors of ours, parenting mentors, who, when their kids were like high school aged, would ask their kids, how am I doing as a father? Hey son, hey daughter, how am I doing as a father? How am I doing as a mother? Good night. Can you imagine that humility? And I'm like flabbergasted by that concept. And I was like, what did they say? Like, what did your kids say? And they're like, oh, they told us. They straight up told us. And that takes guts. That takes massive amounts of humility. There's no place for pride in that conversation. I mention all that because no one likes to admit they're wrong. And when it comes to COVID, no one will ever admit they're wrong. I will here, quickly. I thought COVID would be much worse. And I went back and forth with this a lot in the beginning. The first person who told me about COVID, I distinctly remember it. I was in a group chat with guys in my Bible group. And he mentioned this disease or whatever from China. And my first thought was, oh, that's just China because they don't have toilet paper over there. And I mean that, like they don't have basic sanitation. So of course diseases are going to spread in third world countries. And it's not going to come to America. That was my first thought. Obviously I was wrong, it did spread. And then I started hearing from people that I trust that this is a much bigger deal that we should pay attention to. And I got too wrapped up in it. I got too wrapped up in the fear. Again, honest talk. And I think other people too, but I got like almost excited. This is in the beginning. This is in like February of last year, right? I almost got excited because this was, I think COVID appealed to men's especially, like primal desire for battle and like to protect and defend and stand up against something. It was like this COVID, like this was something real now, right? Like this was, I think a lot of people, and I'll admit to this, there was a little bit of like play acting The Walking Dead. Right? Do you remember going to the grocery store last March? Right? It was like exciting. It was like, it's like, honey, I'm leaving the house. And you wrap yourself up and you trudge to the grocery store and you go in and you protect. You're like, what is there left? What rations do I need to grab? Right? What's going to happen next? It was all eerie in the store, right? There's like something to that, something oddly, primally appealing to that. And I kind of fell into that too much because then politicians took over and took it way too far. 2 weeks to stop the spread. Cool, let's do it. Let's find out what's going on. I should have been much more of an advocate to not giving politicians so much power. And I should have known better than to let politicians have even that taste of power because they'll never give it back. I mean, here we are 16 months later and you still have to wear a useless diaper over your face, at least in California. I should have been a better student of human nature and instead appealed more to common sense measures. Exercise. I mean, we know 78% of people who were hospitalized or died from COVID were obese or overweight. Okay, so everyone, hey, let's use this as the massive incentive that we all need to lose that extra 10, 20 pounds, whatever you need. Everyone, let's exercise. Let's go outside, get some vitamin D, wash your hands, stay home if you're sick, and like really stay home if you're sick. Like a lot of people are like, you just power through, like I gotta go to work. No, really stay home if you're sick. Like don't mess around with it this year. Right? These are wise and sensible things to do as opposed to just shut down the entire country for over a year. So with masks, the Democrats, they'll never admit they were wrong with anything about it, especially with masks. Fauci will make up some rationale in his head for the rest of his life as to why he was wearing 2 masks for the past 2 months after being vaccinated, right? As he said in that it was a Jake Tapper clip. He said, I'm a health professional. I wanted to set a good example. That's not a good example. You're actually doing the opposite of what you should have done. But it doesn't matter. It's anything to rationalize his behavior to himself in order to not admit that he was wrong. That's pride. Yesterday, we showed this picture of Biden with no mask, finally no mask. A bunch of other adults in the picture as well. But do you see that one little disease vector? That child, that 5, 6, 7-year-old child, he still has a mask on. Why? Because he's the one who's not vaccinated yet. So we got to put a mask on that little disgusting disease spreader. Why? What are we doing? That is the maskers clinging to the last bit of control and absolute delusion that they can muster, right? Bringing their delusion and insanity out on little kids. It's absolutely shameful. And I got to go here, but the things that make my blood boil the most are the parents who say, oh, my kids like wearing masks. First of all, I'm sure your kids like playing video games and like looking at iPads at the dinner table and eating ice cream for breakfast and candy for dinner and a lot of things that they shouldn't be doing. That's no excuse. We need to teach our kids to make eye contact, teach our kids to smile, teach our kids to be near other humans. I was hiking the other day in Sedona with the kids, Jack and Grace, they're 4 and 3. I was like, guys, you got to say good morning to everybody you pass by. I don't know, it's just part of the deal. Like if you're on a boat, you got to wave to other people on boats. I don't know why we do it, it's just what you do. If you're on a trail and you pass by someone, you say good morning. It's what you do. Because we're human beings. That's what human beings do. We greet each other. We make eye contact. We don't hide behind our mommy's leg. We don't hide behind our masks. And the kids loved it. After a couple of people walking by, they're like, good morning. And oh, good morning, how are you? We have a little conversation, boom, we gone. That's what life's about. Got to teach your kids to do the right thing. Don't let them hide behind their masks. And don't tell them to hide behind their masks, and don't let them hide behind their masks. But really, more than anything, the true story is you got to have the courage and humility to admit you were wrong, because otherwise you're never going to course correct. And the crazy thing about it is, and this is true for everything in life, not just COVID, when you admit you're wrong about something, people end up trusting you more. The more these clowns in DC backpedal and justify and rationalize the very wrong decisions they made about COVID, the less people will ever trust them again. And they deserve that lack of trust. Coming up next, we're talking about Joe Biden's Family Act. Uh-oh. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word.
And here's what the American Family Plan doesn't do. It doesn't add a single penny to our deficit. It's paid for by making sure corporate America and the wealthiest 1% just pay their fair share.
Oh my goodness. Are you like that's part of like a longer speech. There's so many buzzwords in there that you got to watch out for. Doesn't add a single penny, fair share. It's called the American Families Plan. Like hopefully you're throwing flags on the field like crazy when you hear something even like that. It's an investment to build back better. You falling for this stuff? Terry Schilling is here. He's the president of the American Principles Project. Terry, what's going on, brother?
Hey, how are you, Mike? Good to see you.
Good, man. Really good to talk to you. Okay, so there's a lot in this plan, obviously, so it's quite a hodgepodge. It's an investment. Let's talk about the one good thing in here that you like before we get to the problems and the bad incentives, et cetera. What's the good things?
Well, it expands the child tax credit. It gives parents more flexibility when it comes to handling those everyday expenses that you have as a parent and as a family. These kids cost money. We have to pay a lot of taxes. We have to pay a lot more in housing and clothing and food and all of that just to produce the next citizens and the next taxpayers of America. So I like that aspect of it, but it's not much more beyond that.
Here's downhill from there fast. So the child tax credit's $2,000 right now, and this would increase it to $3,000 to $3,600 depending on the age of the kid. Okay, so that's good. Let's start with the education aspect of it. So it's on both ends, right? So right now, obviously school used to start at first grade, then we already kindergarten, and now there's pre-K, and now they want to go even younger than that. And they want to go 12th grade, now to 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th grade, right? So we need more government control of kids' education earlier and later. What do you make?
Well, look, I think there are two big problems with what they do with pre-K and community colleges. One, it gives our kids to the state to indoctrinate them into this woke left-wing agenda of racism and bigotry and weird sex stuff and critical race theory stuff. It's a nightmare. But the bigger underlying problem is that it exacerbates the problem that families are facing right now. And that is that both parents feel like they must work and that they must work many more hours than they used to in order to make ends meet. This would get our kids further away from the parents, when in reality, what we really should be doing is giving parents the flexibility and more time to spend with their children. That's what family is all about. The Biden administration in this, I call it the American government takeover of American families. And that's exactly what it is. Like, Biden gets families wrong. He thinks that we have families and that we go to work to escape them. No, we go to work to provide for our families so that we can spend more time with them and raise them. He has it totally backwards.
Oh, this is really good, Terry. Let's talk about this more. This is super important because this ties into there's cultural changes we've had over the last few decades, feminism in particular, that's led to this movement where kids are like this burden that we need to be freed from. Women especially need to be liberated from and find their true value in the workplace. And this would make it easier for us to continue to move in that direction. It would almost institutionalize that as opposed to being just a cultural push. It would make it a government-backed push. How would you describe that? Continue that properly.
Yeah, no, exactly. This would expand pre-K to make it universal across the country. So rather than parents making the tough decision to, instead of taking up those extra hours, which really don't provide that much more, it would force them to take up even more hours, put more kids into daycare. This is really a cultural change. And it would be giving our kids over to the state where they would get to set the standards. They would get to set the curriculum for these preschoolers. It's just a total nightmare. What parents, and there's been a lot of public polling on this, only the rich, only the elites want universal pre-K and daycare. That's it. Working class families, they want the flexibility. They would rather have tax credits to where they can choose where the money goes and how it goes to help their families and their kids. And frankly, that's how it should be. Parents love their children. They know their children better than any government bureaucrats. And they should really be given the money and be empowered to make these decisions. You got onto something that's really close to my heart. And it's enraging what this feminist movement has done and how they fleeced the American people. They've convinced the women in America that it's more noble to go work for Google as one of their 200 million employees, or go work for Walmart as one of their 500 million employees. Be one number out of a million, rather than be the most important person, the most important aspect of another person's life, which is their mother. Mothers do this thankless job, and they really should be venerated. And I mean, they're raising and creating the next generation of American citizens. They're setting the culture. It's so much more important than any bureaucratic job that most women take today. And so, look, frankly, I don't care if women work. I think they should. I think they should have a right to. But let's not pretend that being a mother is underneath a career, because it's not. And in fact, I would say being a mother and raising your kids is above having a career.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So this is interesting. So the argument is that the government should stay neutral or incentivize parents' behavior that would encourage them to be a family, to stay home, raise your kids, and as opposed to make it easier to drop kids off at daycare and then go work, because that would make us less, I don't want to say less of a family, right? But less time together, less influence together. Yeah, that's really, really good. Okay, so what would a Republican or what would a conservative-minded program look like if that was the vision?
Well, that's funny that you asked that, because when I saw this plan come out and the price tag at $1.9 trillion, I thought to myself, how many kids are there in America anyway? Because this could be really interesting. There's 72 million kids in America, and you divide 1.9 trillion by 72 million. That comes out to $24,000 per child. So instead, what I would rather do as a Republican, proposal is, if we're going to spend $1.9 trillion, why wouldn't we just give each parent $24,000 for each kid? Because guess what? If you have 2 kids, that mom is probably going to be getting more in tax breaks and tax credits than she would from the second job. So we could actually spend the same amount of money and give parents an entire job. I mean, it's crazy how complicated Democrats make these things, but it makes sense because it's all part of the plan. And the plan is to get parents out of the home, get children into the government-funded schools, and get them indoctrinated to make them cogs in the machine, to where they're subservient to the state and they have no identity outside of being a government pawn. It's really scary, and families really need to start speaking up against it.
Yeah, and your value of a human is determined by your how much money you make at your job,
or your social credit score, from Facebook.
That's where we're headed. Terry Schilling, president of American Principles Project. Terry, thanks for helping me think about that clearly. That's wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, it's really good, because I was going to analyze this based off like economics, and that's just a bad policy. But I can see now the worldview, vision, it's totally off, which of course then leads to bad policy and the rest. Yeah, really good. All right, true story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, the timing of this could not be any better. We kicked off the show talking about abortion and the Supreme Court's deciding to take up this major abortion case. In the last segment, we just talked about family. And our next author wrote the book Under Siege, No Finer Time to Be a Faithful Catholic, Mr. Austin Ruse. Mr. Ruse, how are you, sir?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me, Mike.
It's great to talk to you. Let's start with where we're at. In your book, you mentioned use the term civilizational abyss. I'm with you. In 30 seconds, how do you back that up, that we are indeed in civilizational abyss?
Well, just look at the abortion figures. Just look at the fact that hundreds of millions of Americans are addicted to hardcore pornography. Look at the fact that children on the playground can call up hardcore violent porn with a few strokes of a smartphone. Look at the fact that the LGBT movement is closing in on us, both in the academy and grade schools and the courts. For faithful believers, we are indeed surrounded. And quite frankly, this is a new religion, and they are coming for the heretics, and that is us.
That's so true. How then does one have the courage to stand up against it, especially when the attack against you is that you're mean, intolerant, not Christianly, and all these other things? How do you find that courage then?
Well, you understand first and foremost that God knows what he is about, and he knew that this societal devastation would be upon us. And what did he do? What crazy thing did he do? He sent the likes of you and me. So we begin with an understanding that he sent us, and that should give us a remarkable amount of courage rather than fear. There are certain predispositions of personality that prevent some people from recognizing the wonderful place that he had placed us in this time and place. Some people live in fear. Some people live in nostalgia. Other people spend their days in distraction with, video games and smartphones and things like that. But we have to live in the here and now and recognize that he sent us. And how amazing is that?
Hold on, I want to sit on that for a second because that's awesome. So people live in fear. So it's like of the future. So this is very C.S. Lewis, right? That people live in either in regret or worry, and they don't live in the present. It's very similar. So people live in fear, so it'd be the future, nostalgia of the past, or distraction in the present.
That's right.
Really good.
As Catholics, we pray the Hail Mary, and we ask her to pray for us now and at the hour of our death. 2 moments, right now and at the hour of our death. We cannot spend our days worrying about the past. We cannot spend our days worrying overly about the future. We can prepare for the future, but we have to be in the present moment and discern spirits and recognize what is the task that has been given to us today. And we cannot turn away from them. I fear, not really, I fear that, somebody like Rod Dreher, for instance, instills fear in people. I see the same things that Rod sees, but I say, amen, alleluia, he sent us. Let's go over the wall and get the bad guys.
Good. So what would you say is the biggest battlefront? And I know it's different for everyone, right? But what's one where you think maybe we need more people to engage in then?
Well, I argue in the book that there's a new established church, and I say that it began in 1962 when, in the school prayer decision, the Supreme Court determined that the object and purpose of government has to be secular. That was when they put their thumb on the scale of a long time debate in this country about who we are as a people, going back from the founding up until that moment. And that is, are we a providential people or are we a secular people? This was a back and forth debate, starting with the founders. So shortly after that decision came the contraceptive decisions, Roe v. Wade, sodomy decisions in the 90s and aughts, and then, of course, Obergefell in 2015. I think that this new established church is largely of the sexual church, if you will, and this floats all the way down through the Department of Justice, through Department of Education, to the local school where our children are taught religious dogmas like sex is assigned at birth and that children can be born in the wrong body. These are not based in science. These are based in a new kind of faith. So I think that battling the new established church, there are many denominations in the new established church, but one of the most powerful is the sex obsessed.
Mr. Ruse, I hate we have to leave. Can we do it again and we'll allot more time? That's my fault. I apologize for that, sir. But I'm grateful.
It is not a problem. I would
I
would love to come back and talk about all this again.
We have lots to do. Let me read it and we'll get some more info. Under Siege, No Finer Time to Be a Faithful Catholic. Austin Ruse is the author. Mr. Ruse, thank you, sir.
It is my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. I like this idea a lot of this new established church / cult that we Christians are up against, and this idea of having the courage to stand up boldly, kindly, with conviction for the truth. We need more of that. Hence the name of the show, True Story. Do it again tomorrow. Spread the word.